So, finale time again. They've kind of set it up in a similar way to Utopia's Sound of Drums Last of the Time Lords, essentially tacking a setup for a two-part finale onto the penultimate story, and loosely calling it a three-parter. Which I've got no problem with, and I actually think it's a pretty decent way of setting us up for the inclining stakes. However, this does sound like a bit of a different scenario, as I've heard that Heaven Sent is pretty much its own story, and connected more loosely to the second part than most finales. And apparently it's another one of those ones where Moffat shows off just how massive his brain is, and how much he likes Proust and Samuel Beckett, and you should be so impressed with his ability to articulate such deep and profound thoughts. Which I am, believe me. I mean, with a brain that massive, it must take a very long time for Moffat's thoughts to journey from one end of it to the other. But I'll save my sneering, see if he impresses me. Holy crap, that was awful. Oh, sorry, force of habit. Holy crap, that was awesome! Well, it seems it was well worth the wait for this thought to emerge out the other end of Moffat's massive brain. Took its bloody time, because... wow, Heaven Sent was fucking gorgeous. I loved it. It's like he wrote it specifically for jaded hipsters like me. Really, Heaven Sent was like having my brain cut out of my head and then put back in again back to front for 55 minutes, then swivel back the right way round again at the end, and I was just sort of left dazed and confused, going, what happened? Wait a sec. I know this feeling. Oh god. Moffat's really impressed me. Like, genuinely really impressed me. Well, how the bloody hell's this supposed to work? I'm supposed to be a grumpy bastard who bitches all the time. Like, what the hell, Moffat? You're supposed to be doing shitty innuendos, meaningless fan service, empty spectacle, and dreadful puns. Why the hell did you have to go ahead and write something fucking beautiful? Oh my god, I just called something that Moffat wrote recently beautiful. Oh god, things are going cold. Oh god, I think I'm having a stroke. Okay, in all seriousness, calling this possibly the best episode of the revived series, like some people have been, is probably hyperbole because everyone always does that whenever an episode is surprisingly good. Personally, I'm going to wait and see if I feel the same way about it a few months from now. And I'm not going to pretend it's the most original, genius, daring, super groundbreaking bit of art ever, like some people are, because as a fanboy for the expanded universe, my head was immediately flooded with about 1 billion reference points throughout the duration, including the obvious Rob Shearman one that everyone's been likening it to, and I do see why they are. It is very similar, as Heaven Sent also features a tiny cast list, and goes a bit deeper into the Doctor-companion relationship, and features skulls, albeit with different connotations. I don't like Heaven Sent as much for the record, but that's really not saying much. All that being said though, Heaven Sent goes very far outside New Who's comfort zone of Doctor shows up, there is monster, waves magic buzzy thing at it, / magic sunglasses, and then it stops, in that 1, it's mature and dark as shit, and 2, it's a highly restrained and very ambient and eerie piece that I really didn't expect from Moffat by this point. I'm also a little bit tentative over where we go from here because I want this to be setting a trend for the future of the show. But Heaven Sent has all the earmarks of, this is a special occasion, I had this idea ages ago, and I've put off doing something like this for years because I was unsure if people would like it. In the same way that Russell had the idea for Midnight years before he did it and put off doing it because he was unsure if people would take to it as much as they did. I'm unfortunately thinking it's likely that no one's ever going to try anything like Heaven Sent again, which kinda sucks because it's awesome, but while it's here I'm going to dig through it. I did have my reservations when I heard this episode was going to have no supporting cast and just be Capaldi on his own, because Moffat's had a tendency in recent years to get severe cases of verbal diarrhea and hammer his points home way too heavily. That was what took me out of Listen on so many occasions. While Listen was also trying to be this restrained and ambient piece, whenever I'd start to enjoy the atmosphere, the Doctor would launch into yet another massive overwritten monologue, and I would just start going, Doctor, could you shut up for like 2 minutes and just let me enjoy the moment? I'm not going to feel a certain way just because you tell me to. And while in Heaven Sent there were some moments where I was waiting on tenterhooks fearing that that was where we were headed, I found that whenever the Doctor would start talking to himself that it did work and made sense in context, since he is essentially spending this episode coming to terms with his grief, not yet used to the fact that he's alone. I especially like the ghost of Clara with her back turned to him for most of the runtime, which leaves you questioning whether she's a hallucination brought on by his grief, isolation and insanity, or if she's really there. I like how this episode essentially replaces the Doctor's companion with a self-writing blackboard inside of his mind palace. Speaking of mind palaces, some people have been complaining since last year that there's been a bit too much cross-pollination between Sherlock and Doctor Who. And I do kind of see why, because yeah, I do agree that the Doctor's been kind of talking a bit more like Sherlock in recent times, and there's also been a lot of jokes based on the Doctor being unfamiliar with ordinary human emotions and social conventions. And also there was that explanation of how we got out of the resolution of the cliffhanger in Which is Familiar, which felt very Sherlock to me. And now there is essentially the Doctor inside of his mind palace. Bit different, but you get what I mean. On the surface, it's a kind of similar deal. I didn't mind it though, and contextually it makes a lot of sense because, as said, he is spending the episode grieving, but he's doing that through the means of a story. We're not just sitting around heavily pounding away at this point that he misses Clara and crying over it, until I want to be sick into a bucket. Because the events of Heaven Sent are essentially presented as an abstract trial for the Doctor to get through, which really works considering what just happened at the end of Face the Raven. Coming to terms with your emotions after a tragedy does feel like you're being put through some kind of warped test where the spectre of death is haunting you. Though I'm wondering if maybe we should have saved something like this for 12's regeneration story, as it kind of set me in mind of the concluding part of Big Finish's release Circular Time. Those who've heard it will know why, and it is fucking beautiful and you should totally check it out if you haven't. Because as we have him literally digging a grave and then dying a billion times over and punching that wall with his bloody fists, this is probably about as high as the stakes could possibly get. Yet this is probably the most traumatising thing that's ever been done to the Doctor. Since people got pissed off at Don't Cremate Me last year, I am wondering how lots of the wider audience, you know, outside of us on the internet, will have taken this episode. I haven't seen any controversies or anything, but it's so much nastier than New Who usually is. That is a question I haven't really taken into account in my Series 9 videos. Can a show that's essentially supposed to be fun for all the family, and hold young people and cater for newcomers and features funny robots and talking lion people, simultaneously do something deep and mature and dark like I've been saying I think it should? Because I've been ranting about what I'd like to see the show do, being someone who was 14 when New Who started, and has essentially been watching it for 10 years and kind of grown tired of it doing the same old things every year. And Heaven Sent was exactly what I wanted from Doctor Who, because I'm a morbid gothy shit. But the thing is, you wouldn't really think there's a whole lot of crossover of interest between people like me and the younger and newer people. And you really do have to wonder about the questions surrounding just how broad the target audience is. Because as said, Heaven Sent is pretty much designed for morose hipsters like me. He's in prison for billions of years, pounding at that wall with his bloody fists, going mad, wondering if there's any point to this, whether just this once he can give in and lose. Have no one expecting him to be brilliant and clever, no one expecting anything of him, losing the will to go on till he feels death's cold, clammy hands on his shoulder. Am I a sadist? I think I'm a bit of a sadist, aren't I? Go on, Doctor, crawl back to that teleporter, run around dark, empty corridors alone and dig a grave, lose the will to go on, beat that wall with your fists. Life is misery and despair. Sorry, don't know what came over me there. Okay, here's a picture of some bunnies and some happy music to offset any depression you may be feeling because of me.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
Anyway, the visual design in this thing, I can't do it justice in just a paragraph. I really can't. The twisting, spiralling corridors, the centre of the tower, looking out from the battlements. This castle is a fucking beautiful, gloomy, surreal Gothic masterpiece. It kind of set me in mind of the castle from Edward Scissorhands, which is always a good thing, with a bit of the lighthouses from Bioshock Infinite added in there. I like how this castle looks so familiar. It appears on the surface like any castle that you'd come across in England, but it's made to feel so alien and weird, and being almost completely deserted except for the creepy Dementor looking thing made it all the more effective. This place was just dripping with a horrible, creepy atmosphere. Yeah, last week we did Diagon Alley, this week we're doing Dementors. We're going to do a massive snake or a three-headed dog next. Place your bets now. Anyway, some people have said that Heaven Sent goes on a bit long for what it is, and I respectfully disagree. Its great atmosphere made the time just fly by for me, and Capaldi gives a highly engaging performance. The connection between you and the Doctor is just superb. And I think the fact it's nearly an hour did wonders for it. Any shorter and I think the atmosphere would have been a bit diminished. And also what I like, and this is a very important thing, it's just one story. This is really quite remarkable for Moffat by this point. It's just one idea from beginning to middle to end. In recent years with most of his episodes, he's been chucking like 8 or 9 disparate ideas into a big pile, setting it on fire, pasting the ashes onto sheets of crepe paper, and calling it a script. Heaven Sent isn't a jumble of ideas like last year's finale. It tells one story, it gives you one character, and you are chained to that character for the whole runtime. You really feel his plight. Heaven Sent never gets distracted by anything other than putting said character through tests and baiting him further. The story is almost goading the Doctor on, daring him to see just how desperate and hopeless his situation really is. Sorry, getting a bit morbid again. Have some more bunnies. If I have to offer any constructive feedback, I really think this episode should have been called The Doctor Punches Through a Fucking Wall of Crystal for Billions of Years. Really, think about that. It'd make it really stand out in the TV listings. Oh yeah, also, one minute criticism that I have is I'm unsure if we should have shown Clara's face. I was waiting with bated breath to see if they would show her, but I think it would have been a bit more chilling if we'd heard her voice but we hadn't actually seen her. Oh Christ, yeah, I should have done a whole paragraph on the Dementor-looking thing, shouldn't I? While I'm sure people have been discussing about how it's a bit of a weird and idiosyncratic means of interrogation to stick a guy in an abstract castle inside of that confession dial thing and have him stalked by a silent, creepy figure for billions of years, I honestly don't really give that much of a shit about the logistics of it. It's fantasy. They do the same things different there. And given this story is fairly abstract anyway, it's best not to take all of the events in it too literally. Oh god, I am essentially making a "you just don't get it, it's art, man" argument, aren't I? I really hate me sometimes. But I'd really like to see us venture into some bizarre and abstract alien worlds, because weird is what I come to the show for. I love Doctor Who for the escapism, for the unknown. There has to be some kind of human connection, of course, but I'd really like them to explore such haunting, strange and bizarre and desolate alien worlds and universes. Places almost beyond the mind's comprehension. Christ, I'm a pretentious fuck. One thing I wasn't that impressed with was the cliffhanger, which apparently was Moffat's whopper the whole time. I'm kinda unsure what end of this was supposed to be his whopper, the Doctor being the hybrid thing, or Gallifrey being back, which... Okay, straw poll here. Who didn't see the return of Gallifrey coming? Well, I guess one of my prediction corners was right. Now we've just got to see if a cyberhorse shows up in Hellbent, which I'm going to be fucking disappointed if it doesn't. Oh god, another thing I just have to mention, the editing towards the end where the Doctor is killed over and over again. These cuts here, showcasing the billions of years playing out, are played at just the right speed for just the right amount of time. If anything was different about this sequence, I'd be calling it over-stylized, but the editing here is just fantastic. Christ, I've barely even mentioned Capaldi, have I? He easily puts in his best performance so far, and this is the reason I'd like to see some more restrained episodes with shorter cast lists. Ones that don't try and waste too much time weaving together far too many disparate elements. Not all the time, of course, but more episodes like this would be especially good to build up your audience's good vibes for your main characters. Because actors and actresses can really impress you when they're given a lot of time to show off just how good they can be. That was what worked so well about Midnight. Restraint can allow people to be much more impressive than if you indulge in excess. With nothing to distract the viewer from good performances, they're more likely to really throw themselves into it. As said, you don't have to do it all the time, but it can be refreshing to do it once every so often. God, I've barely even scratched the surface of this thing. I'm sure there is even more in here that I wouldn't be able to pull out from just a second watch. To fully understand Heaven Sent, I'm probably going to have to journey out into space to find Moffat's massive brain that is so ginormous and impressive and has grown so big that it has developed its own gravitational field and has 6 moons orbiting it, which are all named after 16th century playwrights because he's so astonishingly clever and intellectual. Omega, I bow before his mighty brains. So yeah, fucking wow. That's all I have to say to this one. Fucking wow.